Man, I like that music, man. And we're back for another episode of the RookieVille podcast with your hosts, Joe Joe and Cbomb. Cbomb, how was your Memorial Day?
It was great. Did some grilling, hung out with the family a little bit, did a little sparklers, and then we had Texas storm, and my backyard shed flew away. So
Damn.
yeah.
I had a barbecue also with the family as well. And then kind of delayed the recording of this podcast just by a day because, we still got to spend some time with the family. But we get right back into fantasy football. Today, we are talking about the tight end, I guess, tight end debate, if you will, amongst the fantasy space. But we're not going to really focus on that. We are going to focus more on you, Ballswell gamers, to kind of have more conviction of that you drafted a tight end one for your future. So we can try to give you guys that conviction. Here we go. We're gonna just go right into it, Connor. I think we're just gonna focus on Coleston Loveland first since he was drafted first. I'm just gonna go by chronological order then. So let's there you go. We have his NFL.com profile here. We have a 6'6", 248, pretty good arm length and wingspan. I'm not going to focus on too much on those metrics here. I have some other stats to bring to you guys. The first thing that come to mind with his strengths are his route running ability, in my opinion, separation. Over the last 2 seasons, he was 96th percentile amongst tight ends in college football. In that regard, 2.67 yards per route run. Now, if you guys are not familiar with that metric and that indicator, yards per route run is an efficiency metric that takes the average number of yards receiver gains and divides that each time they run a route. So it's a good indicator for a receiver's production, skill set, and overall value, in my opinion. It's kind of taking over the fantasy space. And again, anything over 2 yards per route run is a pretty solid indicator there. Amongst that, Connor, you've mentioned that he was the best receiving prospect amongst tight ends in the class. He's the downfield vertical threat, kind of prototypical in that regard. And that vertical threat is changing the game in today's NFL. So, what else do you have to add along with those strengths on your end here?
Yeah, so I mean, there's some weaknesses as well. Like he's not as good of a blocker as Warren is. He's raw, very raw. The stats weren't there. We can take a look at his stats along with the profile we have there. As you can see, he really didn't produce like some of these top guys. Fannin, Warren as well had over 1,000 yards this past year. I think a couple other tight ends did as well. They were really productive. He really didn't have that much production this year. He only played 10 games, only had 5 touchdowns. Under 600 yards receiving. You really don't want to see that out of a top 10 pick. But his like we were looking at his profile, his prospect grade is 6.7. I think is the second best behind Warren at the tight end position. And then overall, he was picked 10th, which is great. Top 10 tight ends or first round tight ends. Honestly, their hit rates pretty high. We saw what Bowers did last year. We talked about it a little bit on the last pod that he went before Brock Bowers did last year. I don't think the landing spot is, as good just because there's so much target competition there. They still have Komet there. They still have DJ Moore, Adunze. They bring in another guy, and then Caleb Williams, he still has to produce. I don't think the question.
Not just any other guy, Connor. It's your boy, Luther Burden.
Yeah, that's true. We can talk about the receivers later. We'll get into Burden a lot there, but I didn't want to say his name. But we'll get into that. And then Caleb Williams still has to produce. There's still a little bit of a question mark on what Caleb Williams can do at this level. What fantasy production he can get to these receivers. I mean, DJ Moore had a good year last year. Odunze had an okay year. I think some people are expecting just a little bit more out of him. But the question mark's not as big as it is on Warren's side at that level. So,
yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. I do want to throw a couple more, stats, metrics, or even just some other weaknesses that I've, or at least want to throw, or maybe either retort to the blocking a little bit as well. But the receiving versatility that I also found is that in the slot, he had most of his snaps there at 43.7%. he was also versatile enough to play out wide like an X. 16.4% of his routes came out there. Now, Michigan's offense, you had actually his stat box there up for, there you go, exactly. 1,466 total receiving yards. Obviously, over the last 2 years, granted, 2023 was their national championship run with J.J. McCarthy, but they've been a run-first offense his whole tenure there. I mean, all 3 years were under Jim Harbaugh, except for – I'm sorry, 2 years were under Jim Harbaugh. The last year was under, Sharon Moore. Oh, my gosh, I forgot his name. But they're all run first. There was not a lot of opportunity there. So, again, some of these, 43% in the slot may seem like a lot. But even overall yardage, I think he actually accounted for, what was it? I think I have the stat up here. 39% of Michigan's total passing yards in 2024. But they only had 1,678 total passing yards anyway. So not much to say for that. So I guess like an incomplete production profile, right? And then when he brought up some of his weaknesses as a blocker, I would say raw at best. But you're also not a part of a Jim Harbaugh offense if you can't block, right? I think a willing blocker, he definitely has the frame, 6'6", 248, what we read up there. He does have a shoulder injury, so I think that's part of another, I guess you can call it a weakness, because we don't know how much that shoulder injury can linger. It's his AC joint. He had surgery on it in January. Coming into camp, doesn't seem like it's going to hamper him too much, but he did not test. But he's still graded out as an elite, one of the elite or above average athletes coming into the draft. And obviously going to an upgraded system, right? Ben Johnson over, oh God, now I'm blanking on the former coach's name in Chicago. Goodness gracious. Can't even think.
He's in Dallas, right?
What?
He's in Dallas now, right?
I don't even know where he's at.
In Dallas.
He's a good defensive mind, though. But other than that, just couldn't hack it as a head coach. You also touched on what was that?
Eberflus. Is that what you're thinking of?
Eberflus, Coach E. There you go. Anyway, I think we could just go into some similarities and differences too, because you kind of touched on a little bit with Warren. I think the biggest similarity is that what I kind of touched on in the beginning was that they're both dynasty pieces to build around on your teams. They should be elite producers over the course of their career. I think if you had to choose one, Connor, who would you think has the most immediate impact in year one?
In my opinion, it's still Warren.
Okay.
Just because I think his prospect, like I said, I'm in love with Warren. I'm taking him everywhere I can get, but the immediate production, I just think, the target competition in Chicago is just outrageously, there's 3 guys that I think, as receivers are better than Loveland. Maybe one. I don't even know if I would put one above Warren over in Indy. So.
Interesting. Okay, that's not a bad take. I mean, we disagree a little bit on this. I still think that they're both going to be great producers. I think that they do it in different ways, though. So I think the similar but different, right? I think when you watch the tape, did you see both of them with the ability to have yards after catch?
Oh yeah, especially Loveland's catch point is a little bit better than I think Warren's is, so he's able to get out in space just a little bit faster than Warren was. Warren's more of a bruiser type player. Loveland's a little bit of a, more athletic agility guy.
Exactly. So I kind of wrote down similar but different. And the chunk yards after catch, Warren can do it too, but they just do it differently. Both will be chain movers. Loveland is more fluid, elusive to get those chunk yards. The way he sticks, and kind of gets the defender off balance and it kind of gets them to open their hips on some of those underneath routes or those slants are very reminiscent of a lot of wide receivers, just tall wide receivers. You can just stick it and go and get get that separation initially, and then just go upfield and kind of break some tackles more elusively. Doesn't really deliver the punishment like Tyler Warren, but still get those first downs, right? Loveland will look effortless as he does it and more fluid. I don't want to double count the receiving room and the overcrowdedness of that in Chicago. I think, yes, it is. There's a lot there, but again, I think part of the reason why he sometimes slides into some later rounds, the middle rounds, is that because people are double counting that. So without further ado, let's go to Tyler Warren.
Just one question on Loveland. Is there any worry about Komet? Because Komet's been established there. He had a great year in 23, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He had a top 10, 12 fantasy year. Is there any worry at all about Kmet, just having, experience, maybe a little bit better blocker, about, getting in front of Loveland and Loveland having just a little bit of, rookie year type getting on the field?
I just think if they're going to go 11 personnel and they're actually putting someone in this, they're actually lining them up in the slot, then no, I think he's going to be on the field for those type of snaps. If they are doing double tight, of course, Komet's going to be on the field. If they're in need of pass protection, I think that Komet's going to be the one that they ask more than Loveland in those regards to have more pass pro. So it remains to be seen. We haven't seen a snap of football yet with them on the field with NFL competition. So Tyler Warren, strengths obviously just come out with the physicality and toughness. I don't think you would argue any of that. A ton of tackles. He wants to punish you when he gets the ball in his hands. Very dynamic, well-rounded playmaker and weapon. Versatility just screams volumes. At QB, he lined up at 39 snaps. Running back, fullback. So in the backfield, he lined up in 69 of the snaps that he had. Tight end, in line, 414. Slot, 293. And out wide, 93. And don't forget, he also played some O-line corner at 8 snaps. So he played literally at every single position on offense, every single position. And he couldn't have landed a better position in need of depth at any of those positions, if you could actually argue. But he won't play too much at the backfield. I think more of a fullback type, if anything. I don't think he's going to be lining up in John Taylor's position there. As a tight end, though, I think one of the biggest things that separates him from Loveland is that the separation in zone coverage, or he finds the soft spots really well. I think that's where he's going to get most of his targets, or just getting some of those chunk plays, because he can stretch the field a little bit too. Mackey Award winner, and actually a slightly better yards per out run, 2.77 YPRR. So anything to add there, and or you can touch on some weaknesses on your own.
Yes. So like I said, I love Warren. He went just a couple picks after Loveland did. Draft capital is big for me, but that small of gap is never too much of a worry. Is like I said, the receivers in front of him, you're worried about maybe Pittman, who had a down year last year. Downs was probably the receiver one last year. Jonathan Taylor. I don't think any of those guys are, quite the level that DJ Moore and stuff. I think their biggest concern will be with Warren will be QB play, will be Anthony Richardson. He got benched last year for some Flacco. So you can see that, he's not the most explosive guy, so he's not going to be, cutting up the field. He's going to be getting his yards very, bruiser-like, very, very similar to Jeremy Shockey back in the day. It reminds me a lot of him. If they're man coverage, he's not going to drain a lot of separation, especially when he might have their best, corner or best, DB coverage wise on him at times. So that might be a little bit worrisome, but I think they're going to use him as a gadget player too. He just, you had to get him the ball. Penn State loved, like you said, he lined up at quarterback because they just needed him at times to get the ball against Ohio State or whoever it was. They wanted him. He was their main focus the whole year, basically him and Singleton back there in Penn State. So
he popped off the tape, man. Just like you can just see that he was the guy, the guy that obviously had the best NFL talent out of that group that made a pretty deep playoff run for the college football too. Did it all for him. Speaking of the Wildcat quarterback, he actually carried the ball 26 times for 218 yards. There you go. You have it up there as well for 4 scores. He also was pretty close to Harold Fannin in total receptions for that year. He had 104. Harold Fannin had 115, 117, I think. But 1,233 yards is nothing to scoff at. 8 scores, 15 scores in the last 2 seasons. Definitely could get in the box. 3 of 6. You don't even have the passing up here, but he had 3 of 6 completions, 35 yards, and a touchdown throwing as well. I think he's the perfect blend of throwback with modern. I think there's probably one of the greatest taglines you could probably give this guy. And I think he's a culture dude too, to kind of change what they lack over there in Indy, and kind of just bring that new culture, maybe that new identity to this team. And he fits right in with the run first scheme. I think that Shane Steichen is going to deploy with the current QB situation and Jonathan Taylor. Even Gronk, I have a cool little one, but Gronk even said on a podcast with him and Julian Edelman, he reminds him of himself, he said. direct quote, he has my type of game. Not catching 10 balls a game, catch 4 big ones. TDs or the 3rd and longs, 3rd and 20 up the seam. He's just a different style. Dirty. That's his style. So I love that quote, especially from a great tight end like Gronk was. Bryant McFadden, a former NFL DB, comped him to George Kittle because even Tyler Warren himself comped him and likes to model his game after George Kittle. So that comp of like wanting to block and be a receiver threat, I think that George Kittle comp is very, very fair, as well as Dallas Clark. I mean, you mentioned Jeremy Shockey. Definitely that run after catch is kind of reminiscent of Jeremy Shockey, but Dallas Clark wore 44 and he's with Indy. I like that, just like in that sense too. So a lot like Coleston Loveland, though, I don't think you can double count also his landing spot against him. That being said, the ceiling outcomes of him being gobbling up targets is likely not gonna happen. I don't foresee that. But him being the primary weapon there's the opportunity for that, and maybe he does get an increased target share. We don't know. I just don't see that over here in May of 2025 right now. So that kind of wraps up our deep dive of these two players. Unless there's anything else you want to add there, Connor.
Yeah, just one more thing on Tyler Warren. As you can see here, he's a late breakout. He didn't break out really until his 5th year. He got redshirted his 1st year, so maybe that doesn't count against him. But 4th year on the field, really, which sometimes, you take a look at that and you're a little bit worrisome. But once he broke out, he was, like I said, he was the dominant force over there in Penn State, production-wise. He, like Joe Joe said, he was probably the second best, receiver or tight end last year, production-wise, right behind Fannin. Although Fannin, played at Bowling Green, played a lot of trash teams, but that's another name you can keep a lookout for. Tight end wise, just his production was crazy last year. But like we said, his Tyler Warren, I think he came like 5th or 6th or something in the Heisman voting as a tight end. Seven. Yeah. So, that's still pretty good as a tight end.
Pretty good, yeah.
There, so.
As far as all around college football, for sure. You mentioned something that I just wanted to also kind of leave a lasting note on it. But you know what? I think we said it all, to be honest. It's actually this. The late production, the late surge, I guess, in his career in college, he was behind 2 current NFL tight ends, Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson, who Theo Johnson was also an athletic freak. And they both have jobs securely in their respective squads over there in Jacksonville and, oh my gosh, that New York Giants. So I don't know if we have too much time, Connor. Probably like a minute. Because I want to keep this under 20 minutes. So I do have let's just do 2 others. Elijah Arroyo, and I want to touch on Oronde Gadsden because we already touched on Terrence Ferguson. So Elijah Arroyo, do you have any superlatives about him? Because overall, I would say it's the biggest thing that from the draft is that the coaching staff believes that he can play X. So with DK Metcalf exiting, that he runs an extensive route tree enough to possibly play some X as well. He just didn't do that. But my biggest red flag is his injury history. He only caught 46 balls across 4 seasons. That is a very incomplete production profile. So that's my biggest red flag with him. But what say you?
Yeah, I think he's very athletic. He's in a great situation over there. I just, if he gets on the field, I think he's going to be, product. But we'll see if he ever, materializes there. He's probably my 4th tight end off the in the rookie drafts. I think after obviously the 2 we talked about, Ferguson and then Arroyo.
Yeah, I can get behind that. The other one, a deep sleeper, I think either 4th round, 5th, you go into 5th rounds of certain dynasty rookie drafts, or off the waivers, is Oronde Gadsden. He is the son of also a former NFL player, a lot like Mason Taylor. But Oronde Gadsden was a former NFL wide receiver for the Dolphins who got over 3,000 yards over a 6-year career. It's not too bad. But 73 receptions, 934 yards, and 7 touchdowns at Syracuse. Actually toppled over 900 plus in 2 seasons at Syracuse as well. He gave me, just kind of like how I was touching on Terrence Ferguson, giving me Kelsey vibes, the way he runs, the mannerisms. Gadsden gave me Darren Waller vibes, just immediately off the tape. Just the way he runs. I would like him to break more tackles, but there's a good opportunity there. He only has to really usurp Tyler Conklin, and you might have mentioned Will Dissly pre-show, but I think there's opportunity there with Justin Herbert. So anyway.
Sounds good.
All right. So with that, guys, I hope that helped out with some of the little deep sleepers there amongst the top 2 tight ends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on this pod. But that will do it for this episode. Stay tuned for more. And that we are out for the Rookie Pod.
That's a wrap.